So today's agenda is about Apple Pencil. So we'll talk about what is Apple Pencil, where you can use it, what it does, some differences between the three different pencils, and some demonstrations of using it on an iPad. Okay, so we'll take a look at that. Hopefully that'll answer most of our questions. So let's talk about a few things here about settings. Apple Pencil will automatically pair with Bluetooth when you set it up or when you get it, unpack it. The pairing is very much like Apple's ease of use with AirPods and other things. And in your settings for Apple Pencil, you can choose to only draw with Apple Pencil, or if you don't have that on, you can draw with both your finger and Apple Pencil. Scribble is the handwriting recognition that you can use with Apple Pencil. So it'll convert handwriting to text, and you can turn that on or off in the stylus controls, and I'll show you that. And then there are some pencil gestures, a couple of gestures that you can set in settings so that if you want to open up a quick note, you can swipe from the lower left hand or lower right hand corner of your iPad towards the upper left, and it'll open up a note right away, to blank note. Or if you want to take a screenshot, and you can modify those settings a little bit too. I'll show you the settings on my iPad. So it's an iPad accessory. It's not meant to work with iPhones. It's not meant to work with Macs. It's meant to work strictly with your iPad. It has a battery. It connects with Bluetooth, and it works like a pencil on your iPad screen. And you can be using it instead of tapping with your finger. So you can tap icons, and you can tap and use swipe gestures with your pencil instead of with your finger while you're using your iPad. So you don't have to switch between finger and pencil. So it's kind of convenient that way to use it. Okay, it works with a lot of Apple apps. Most all Apple apps will let you use it. Notes is one of the major ones it works with. Freeform, we'll take a look at that. It works with Pages, Keynote, Numbers. It works in any text field. So if you're in Safari and you're in a web browser, instead of typing in a text field, you can write it in to the text field. And it works with many, many, many more Apple apps. It works with really a lot of Apple apps specifically for iPad. As you may or may not know, Apple makes a slightly different version of iOS operating system for the iPad that they call iPad OS, which takes advantage of some of the features that are available in the iPad, and particularly the size of the screen, but they don't necessarily work on an iPhone or on a Mac. Okay. Now, non-Apple apps. Virtually every type of app you can draw with. Procreate's very popular. Adobe apps, virtually all the Microsoft 365 apps will work with Apple Pencil, and most note-taking apps will work with Apple Pencil. One of the noticeable absent app families here is Google. I tried downloading Google Draw and tried using it with Apple Pencil. It does not work with Apple Pencil. So whether the pencil works on your iPad depends on the app, in addition to the fact that you have to own an Apple Pencil. So some apps will not work with Apple Pencil for recognizing where it is on the screen. And so that's one of the things to keep in mind. But it's really used by a lot of people who like to draw, create, because you can get much more precise control than you can with your finger. Your finger is about an eighth to a quarter of an inch in diameter. So when you're trying to get it precisely positioned on something, it's very difficult. Whereas with the Apple Pencil, you can get it precisely where you want it on the screen of the iPad. That's one of the great things about it. And when it works in an app, it'll typically recognize handwriting and convert that handwriting to text for you. Any questions about that? I didn't test it with non-Apple apps, but check the app to make sure it works with Apple Pencil if you have a question about it or not. But virtually everything you might use with drawing works. If it works with the iPad, it'll work as long as the app works with it, but it'll work in any text field that you have when you're using Safari or Mail or other things like that too. Okay. Which Apple Pencil do you get? There's actually three models. So it depends on your iPad, which one will work with your iPad, and your budget. Okay, so this might impact you thinking about whether you should get a new iPad or not, because some models of pencil only work with certain iPad models. And of course, they introduce more features as you go up in price. There are three price points for Apple Pencil. And depending on which model of iPad you have, we'll take a look at this chart and see which ones do it. Now, let's talk about some of these features. They all feature pixel perfect precision. That means that you can point to a really definite point on your screen and it'll identify that point. Well, let me talk first about the prices here. The second generation iPad Pencil is the most expensive at $129. There is a new model that's a little lower price called USB-C that is $79. And there's the first generation, which was $99. I have a first generation Apple Pencil because that's the one that's compatible with my iPad. And you can see it has four features. We'll go through the features that all three of them have so you understand. They work like a pencil, literally. You can hold them in your hand like a pencil. I'll show you a camera. I have a camera that I set up above my desk so you can see me drawing on my iPad for a little while. And we'll see how that works. And then we may just do some screen sharing from my iPad to Zoom, but I wanted to show you how that works. So you can really draw precisely. They have what they call low latency. If you had a delay between when you did something with your pencil and when the iPad recognized it, that's called latency, the time it takes for the information. And low latency is really important so that you can write and it responds as you are doing things with it. You don't have to wait for it to catch up, which is great. It has something called tilt sensitivity. So if you tilt it, it'll change a little bit about how it draws and does things. And the second generation and the first generation have pressure sensitivity, which is great for drawing. Okay, the USB-C one does not have that. So it's not really the best one to get for drawing with if you want to draw or illustrate. I know we have some artists among us that may want to consider that. So that's a factor to consider. Two of them attach magnetically so that they will stay with your iPad and you won't lose them, which is convenient. They do, they do wireless pairing and charging. The second generation is the only one that charges from the magnetic attachment. So it'll charge without you having to plug it in. On my Apple Pencil, I have a little cap that pops up and it has a lightning connector. The USB-C model has a USB-C connector. Okay, so that's something to consider. And obviously, if you have an iPad with USB-C versus an iPad with Lightning, that will affect which one you buy as well. The second generation, since it pairs and charges wirelessly, the type of connector doesn't matter for that one. The second generation and the USB-C models will hover, which means as you bring it down to your iPad and hold it over an icon, it'll highlight the icon or the area, the setting or the touch or whatever you want to deal with it. You don't have to actually tap to do anything. My first generation pencil does not have a hover, so I can't show you that. That's one of the things that it lacks, but it's very good pencil. I find it useful. So that's what hover does. Okay, so as you go up in price, and then you get two other features with the second generation, you get something called double tap, which means if you tap on your pencil twice with your finger, it'll let you change the stylus tools. And I'll show you the stylus that we work with, the tools, which is really convenient for scrolling through tools if you want to. And of course, it gets engraved, if you want to personalize it. Okay. So that's the differences between the generations. They will all act like a pencil when you draw, when you write, but just that there are some subtle differences in terms of how they charge, a little extra features you'll get with the second generation. Yes, Carol, you have a question?
I don't understand what engraving is.
They put your name on the pencil. They engrave it, right? You can buy air tags, for example, with engraving if you want to. My son and daughter-in-law gave me a Christmas present or a birthday present where they got me engraved air tags so that they have my initials on them. Compatibility. This is the puzzle. The second generation will work on an iPad Pro 12.9 inch, third, fourth, fifth, sixth generation. It'll work on iPad Pros 11 inch. So Apple differentiates their models based on the size of the screen and the generation. So the second generation has to work with a model that supports the magnetic charging. So it has to be one of these models. But if you didn't want to spend $129, for example, and you had a model that, like one of these, you can see a lot of them will work with USB-C, but you may need to get an adapter if it has a lightning connector. I think the iPad 10th generation has USB-C. I think the Mini does as well, but I'm not positive. And I'm not sure whether the Air 5th has USB-C or not. So those are some things that might be factors that you might have to deal with. You can check the website. And then the first generation will work with older models, but it won't work with some of the newer models. So if you see here's an iPad Pro 10.5 inch, that's kind of an older model of iPad. That's why I have the Apple Pencil first generation. I do not have a choice. And if you had a first or second generation iPad Pro 12.9 or a third generation iPad Air or a fifth generation iPad Mini or an iPad that's 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and it'll work with the 10th, but it requires a USB-C to Apple Pencil adapter. The Apple Pencil first generation is a lightning adapter, and it charges by plugging it into the port on your iPad. So keep in mind which generation of iPad you have. You can find out by going to Settings, General, About, and it will tell you what model of iPad you have. It's become much easier to get that information now. So that's from Apple's website on Apple Pencil. And so that's what they're telling you can do. So you may only have a few choices. Now, most of the ones the second generation will work on, you can also go USB-C, which is why they introduced it, so that they introduced a lower cost Apple Pencil that will work with those generations of iPad. Just look up your model number under Settings, General, About, and that'll tell you your model number on your iPad. A couple of things it does. Okay, it can open a new note quickly by tapping or swiping on the lock screen on your iPad, which is kind of convenient if you want to take a note quickly and you carry your iPad for note taking. You have access to stylus tools. There's a tool called Scribble. You have to have it turned on in settings. And when you have Scribble turned on in settings, you get this little A, and I'll show you live on my iPad how it looks. And you can change your stylus. You have a Scribble tool, a felt marker, a fine point, a highlighter, an eraser, a selection tool, a ruler for drawing straight lines. It took me the longest time to figure out how to use the ruler, but I finally know how to use it now. And then you've got a color palette you can select. You can undo and redo things. We'll actually show you live that. Text editing. You can do text editing with your pencil. You can delete a word by crossing it out. You can insert text by tapping in text. You can join or separate characters. You can select text by circling it. You can select a word. You can select a paragraph. And these are things that you have to practice to get used to using, but they do give you the ability to do these things. Here's the information from Apple's website. To delete a word, you scratch it out. I am not a professional at doing all of these, but I do some of them. Insert text, you touch and hold in a text area, and then you can write in a space. It opens up a space. So you can separate characters. You can draw a vertical line to draw or separate characters. You can draw a circle around the text or underline it to see editing options. It brings up the editing selection. You can double tap a word, or you can select a paragraph by triple tapping a word, or drag your pencil over the paragraph. So it's really like using a pencil with text editing. It really works well that way. You can convert handwriting to text. So let's say you were not using the scribble tool and you were writing things out, you were writing some notes. You can select handwriting, and one of the options is to convert it to text. So now you can see my iPad sitting on my desk, and here's my pencil with my hand, and it's like you're looking over my shoulder, right? Okay, so I opened up notes. If I take my pencil and I tap on this, there's a little stylus tool up here in the upper right-hand corner. So now you're seeing my iPad screen, and in the camera, you're seeing me moving my pencil. I don't have hover with iPad Pencil 1, so you don't see the little cursor moving. You don't see anything getting highlighted. But if I tap on the stylus tool, it brings up the stylus selection at the bottom. And I can just tap with my pencil to choose various stylus tools. And the scribble tool lets me write, and it'll convert it to text. So if I write new note, it'll convert it to new note. If I just select the pen tool and I write new note, it doesn't change anything. Okay, so that's the difference between the scribble set function and using it as a pen or a pencil. When I've written something, I can tap on the eraser and I can erase it just by wiping over it like a regular pencil eraser would use. And I can write something new if I want to. On these stylus tools, I do have the ability to change the thickness of the stylus and the color. So if I wanted to draw a box and I wanted to fill it in with yellow, I have the ability to do that. I can draw a shape if I want to, and I can draw with it just like a pencil on my screen, and it'll create and draw anything I want to. And again, I can change the stylus dimensions or thickness or color. The color palette is really the full Apple color palette that's available just on any Mac or iPad. So you have the ability to select by grid or by spectrum, or use sliders to select depending. And you also have the ability to use the eyedropper to select a color. You can see as I move it over, I can actually pick a color based on my last color that I used. That's the color picker tool, kind of a nice tool. And you can see I'm drawing in notes. So if I want to erase anything, I can tap the eraser and I can just erase it just like a pencil. If I wanted to highlight something, let me draw something a little clearer here. Red, okay. I don't know if this will work or not, but we'll try it out. If I select it with that little selection tool, it gives me the ability to then move it around. It wasn't drawn with a good stylus, but I can actually, if I tap on it, now I can copy it as text, and it'll hopefully convert it to text. I don't know if it will or not. Didn't seem to do a good job at it. You can also tap copy. Let me insert, translate, straighten, insert space above. Said copy as text. Let's see if I copy it. And then if I paste it here, if I can paste it here, if it'll paste. Yes, it did it. So you can copy and paste. Sometimes it'll convert it to text. So if I go back to, I see my stylus is now a text stylus. So I can move this around. I can highlight. If I wanted to insert something, I can start typing in here. if I want to, and it'll try and do this. I'm not that great at it, so I'm not the best example of doing this, but it's possible to do a lot of different things. Now I've got a note. So if I exit notes, for example, and I go to settings, I can tap on my screen. It'll bring up things as I tap, so I can use this. Let's go to Pencil. There's usually Apple Pencil here in settings. So it tells me the battery charge. I can set it up so that I'm only drawing with Apple Pencil. So I can set it up so if I have this off, I can draw with my finger or I can draw with pencil. Scribble needs to be turned on, okay, so that it will do it in a text field. We'll try going to a web browser and see how it works, and we'll try creating an email and see how it works. I have two pencil gestures, a left corner swipe if I swipe from left to right, or if I swipe from right to left. So if I swipe from left to right, it takes a screenshot for me. So that's one of the gestures that it can do for me, and I can save that to photos. The right to left opens up a new note for me right away. So I can type hi, and then I should be able to convert. I'm on Scribble. It opens up a new note. So it's a quick way to get to your note settings if you want to. And you can change these settings if you want to between how you want to use the quick note between the right-hand corner and the left-hand corner. For some people, it's easier to swipe left to right. For some people, it's easier to swipe right to left, depending on which gesture you want to utilize for that. So those are your settings for Apple Pencil, and it will also show up in Bluetooth as something that's connected. Okay, so here it's connected and I can use it. Now, you can also use it for marking up photos. So let's go to that screenshot I just took here. Well, let's take this AI photo I did with Dolly. Okay, if I want to edit this photo or mark it up, it looks like a real cat, doesn't it? I was very impressed with what it did. I can tap edit, and edit brings up markup tools. In the upper right-hand corner, I've got a little markup stylus here, and that brings up my stylus I can use with pencil. So I can draw with a marker here, and I can circle something with my pencil by using my pencil to draw on the picture if I want to. And I can make it bigger. Let me make the stylus bigger, really thick, so you can see where I'm pointing to, and doing something with contrast. So you can literally draw and mark up any photo with your Apple Pencil as well. You could do it with your finger, but you have much more precise control when you're using this. And it doesn't destroy the original photo. It just is something that can be used when you're interested in using it with photos. Now, one of the apps that's really designed to work well with photos or with pencil is Freeform. It's a free app. It basically creates an unlimited dimension sheet of paper that you can do things with. So if I want to open up a new Freeform page, it's called a board. I just tap on the open new one, and I do have an option. I have a grid, as you can see. I can turn the grid on and off if I want to. And I have a stylus. I also have access to a few other things. I can insert photos. So if I wanted to insert a photo from I can select the item here, and I can add it to my settings here, and then I can move it around on this with no real restrictions of where I move it or how I move it. If I tap on the stylus and I have Scribble selected with the A, that's the one that's highlighted, I can say, this is an AI photo. Not really good. I'm not a good scribbler, But if I want to, I can cross this out and I can write some more and write a little bit clearer. And it creates a second line here. I can move these around if I want to. I can select them, and then it gives me the ability to edit, copy, cut, paste, delete, duplicate. I can change font sizes and do all types of things. There's a shape tool in Freeform that is kind of interesting. It has options at the top where there's basic shapes like a square or a circle you can draw. You can insert arrows and you can move them around. If you don't want to draw on the screen, you can just tap with your finger and move them around. You have geometry images that you can utilize, objects you can use. Let me get back to Freeform here. You have objects that you can use, like chairs, furniture, and they have them separated by animals. So you can really use this for illustrating almost anything you might want to and creating something. They also have connector tools. So if you have a connector, you can connect it to objects and use it to make sure that the line is connected properly to an object wherever you might want to use it. And then they have obviously a text field here. So we can double tap that and we can enter our text. So it takes a little while to get used to using Apple Pencil instead of tapping on the keyboard, but it does give you the ability to do a lot of things. I'm not, like I say, a pro at using connector, but let's say we want to connect this shape to this arrow. One of the things that connector gives you the ability to do is it gives you the ability to draw a line that will automatically connect and show you connectors off or connectors on. So it gives you the ability to connect shapes together a little bit easier than if you were just moving them around on your own. So if I add a shape here, let's go with some objects or geometry here, and I tap that and move it here, and I want to add another shape, and I move it here. Let's take a pencil. If I use connector, it'll give you the ability to connect shapes using what are called connectors. And I haven't used connectors a lot, so I'm not that sophisticated, but if I take it, oh, there we go. Okay, I remember. It's the plus sign that you use. If I tap on a shape, I discovered it's these little dots that are around the shape itself, I believe. Or if I grab an edge of the shape, let's see, if I turn on connectors, turn it on, and I have an arrow pointing out of the shape. Let me move it over here. You can see the arrows that are pointing out of the shape there. So if I drag the arrow, it gives me the ability to use it as a connector. If I tap with my finger on the shape here, you can see the little arrow. If I drag that arrow, it lets me connect a shape. It's just kind of an interesting tool to be there, but you turn connectors off so that if you're drawing things, it doesn't automatically assume you're a connector. But if we want to insert another shape here and we find an object like a lamp and we put this lamp up here, you can see the shape has these arrows outside of it that I can use to connect it to another shape, and it'll automatically connect it right at the edge, so I don't have to worry about where that edge is. So this is very object-oriented, free form, literally, and there's no edge to this document anywhere. It keeps on going, which is kind of an interesting tool. So if you're just doing concepts or ideas or something like that, and you just want a literally free form tool to draw with or to illustrate with or get ideas down on paper, and it gives you the ability to combine photos and paste photos in, create objects, if you want to. The connector shape is here, so I can connect things to each other and create and bring them together in any way. You can share it. You can export this to notes, or you can even ship it off to people that'll save it as a PDF file when you do it that way, though. And you can turn on a grid system. And what's kind of interesting, I'm going to move my picture out of the way here so I can just slide up and I get all kinds of space. If I bring up this grid system, I can draw a line, and I'm okay. Let me draw my pencil here, and I can draw a line kind of straight. It's really hard to draw straight lines. Or I can take the ruler. Okay, if I tap on the ruler, this ruler can be moved around with your fingers for drawing and positioning things. So if I want to draw a straight line, I set up the ruler, and then I put my pencil on the edge of the ruler, and I draw the line I want to draw, and there it's straight. Kind of an interesting way to do it. If I want to draw another straight line, I can draw another straight line as long as I want. So it gives you the ability to draw and position things at very precise angles if you want to. Anything that you've drawn with pencil can be erased with the eraser if you want to. And this little stylus that has the diagonal lines is a selection tool, so I can select an object like this, and it brings up my selection menu where I can cut, copy, delete it if I want to, if I made a mistake and did something differently that I wanted to. Now, I haven't tried this until just now, but let's see what happens if I bring up Safari and I open up a new tab. Theoretically, I should be able to write in the search box, right? So let's go to Microsoft and see if it converts it. It did. It did. So you can use it to write almost anywhere you might want to enter text into a field.